All right, in this video, I'm going to go over just a little bit about what is in a model, the components of a model, and their subdivisions. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a cube here. I'm going to hit F and zoom in on it. Now, the model is made up of components. So I'm going to switch my display into a wireframe on shaded mode. Okay, so up here, by default, we're in what you call object mode. So when I select something, it's as an object there. When it's in a hierarchy, that means it's in a group. This isn't a grouped object, but what I can do is I can select it, I can group it to itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here. I can either go to group, or I can go to pick it, and I can, on the hotkeys are Control G. Okay, so now it's a group. Okay, sometimes it's good to group even single objects, because sometimes you actually you'll do, this is for animation later, but sometimes you'll move the actual group. You won't move the actual object, because that way the actual object can keep its original transform states. Okay, which is something we'll get into later. In the last lesson too, I showed a little bit about naming conventions for objects in Maya. We can get more into that later. That gets, when we get to animation, that gets to be more important. You can rename stuff. So I'm going to rename it. I'm going to rename this. I'm going to take the P out, and I'm going to put underscore 01. Okay. Just getting people used to some of the naming conventions in Maya. And I'm going to put it on its own layer. These are just the force of habit. I just tend to do these for almost everything. So then I'll double click on this, and I will type LYR underscore 01. Okay. And last lesson, we went over view controls and things like that, but this all becomes very useful. Okay, so this is just this is setting up a very simple scene, as basic as it can be. Okay, so here we go. So yes, if you wanted to hit hierarchy mode, then you would select that at this level. Okay. Right now we're going to be in object mode. So now in the model, we want to get to some of the components underneath the hood here. So let me click on the model. That is in this mode here. This is called component mode. So if you notice now, it's changed its display. So some students have seen this before, and in the last lesson I did a quick little lesson on that. So now we're going to pick on this. I'm going to pick on these are called vertices, because basically this is just a Maya is just a mathematical. These are basically just visual representations of mathematical structures and forms. If you look at these files, these all actually have grid points, or Cartesian plane points, and they have numbers attached to them. So the models are made up of these different components. There's vertex, there's edge, and there's face. So you can access these when you're in this mode. You have to be over here. This is hierarchy, object, component. Okay. So now if I right click on this, then you'll see this is called a marking menu. We haven't got too much into this yet, but I've been trying to keep students kind of on the interface. And we can access that here. So you can change to edge. This is by, you click on the right mouse button and then you kind of move around. Sometimes it takes a little getting used to. So we're really only going to be dealing with vertices, faces, and edges right now. Okay. And you can get to object mode over here if you wanted, or you could get to other modes. Or we haven't really got into this yet. This is the modeling toolbox. We're going to have a whole lesson just on this when we start really modeling on actual the elements here. But over here as well, this is pretty nice too. So here we can basically be in our kind of object mode here. So it automatically sends us into object mode, right? Then I can hit this. I'm going to be in component mode. So this is going to let me pick the vertices. Okay. You can pick multiple vertices. You can window select the vertices. And I'll show you in a minute what we can do with these. Okay. This is edge mode. So now I'm picking the edges. And this is face mode. So now I'm going to pick each face. Now we're gonna have a whole lesson on this thing to get much more in detail and complex. So I'll go over all these, like I said, but these can also be like, you can move these, like, so I can take this and I can move this up, right? Okay, so I'm gonna hit Control Z to undo that. All right, so that's the basics here. Just if you want to access these controls here from a visual interface, then you would go over to the modeling toolkit. And then if not, then go back just to our regular default mode, which is over here, the channel layer editor. And then you can hit right mouse button over here. And so say I want to just hit edges, so I can actually hit the right mouse button, then I can select that. Okay, I'll get back into pick mode so I'm not moving things. All right, so now I'm just selecting that. I can hit right mouse button again. I can hit the vertices if I want. You can also shift select vertices. If you want certain ones, you can deselect certain ones with Control. If you want to deselect everything, you go out in the space. Okay, but as I showed in the previous lesson, and I'll just show quickly again, I'm going to turn off grid snap here. You see, I can now deform the object like that. Okay. All right, so there's another key thing in here as well. This is subdividing a model. So I'm going to go back to object mode, and I'm going to go back just to select mode, so I don't make any chance of moving it. You can hit there's kind of like an under part to the model. Maya is built up of nodes, and we'll explain that in detail later. But the nodes are different layers to the model. So underneath everything is a node here that goes down to it's called the inputs. So if I click on that in the channel editor, you'll notice you can actually change subdivisions here. So say I want to type in a 2. Okay, I'll type in a 2. Okay, I'll type in a 2. Enter. So now I've added subdivisions here, right? So now I want to go back to my component mode. I'm going to hit vertex. But now, look what happens when I go to move this. Now I have this extra. Now I have this thing in the middle of the face there, which I can move around. So this is pretty nice. Okay, and you can do the same thing. I mean, you can hit faces. Like I can select now. If you notice, like before it was one big face, now it's 4 faces because now it's been subdivided. Okay, so I'll hit Control Z. Oh, well, I'll deselect. I'll just pick out the space. So there you go. So now this has many more components, and these can also be accessed over here. We haven't done too much with the attribute editor yet. Oops, let me go back into, let me get out of component mode. Let me get into object mode. Okay, so now here we are in object mode. I've picked it. You'll always know it'll turn green. And when you hit the object editor or attribute editor, then you'll see there's all kinds of other layers you can get to in the model here. So you can also access those sub components to the model here. Like say I want to type in 3. So I want these things 3. So I can hit 3, hit enter. Okay. I'm going to hit 3. Oops, I'm 23. Sorry. Let me type 3. All right. So now I want to increasing resolution here. Okay. So say I want also 2. I want to reset it. So I'm going to go back to 1, 1, 1. And don't get too worried about this stuff yet, especially not getting all these deep layers in here on the attribute editor. I wouldn't worry about that right now. So we'll go back here. There's another way also too. Let me go change our mode. Let's get into the modeling mode. We can get into, yeah, here we go. I'm going to add divisions. So here's another way. We go up to edit mesh components, add divisions. So here's what I can do. You can change the level here too. So this is, well, this is exponentially change the divisions on this thing. So that's another way you can access some of the divisions here. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? Let me show you something else. Yeah, so you also have this little thing comes up here, this little widget. So I wouldn't get too worried about this right now. we can, there's a couple other ways to access information here. Anyway, we'll get more deeply into that, getting in accessing the model controls up here. Okay, so this is going to be really essential. So going forward, you're going to need all this, but I just wanted to explain just with the most simple model we could, just a tiny little cube here, what we can do with the model and where we're going to be going with things and how to access the component mode of the model. Because the next lessons we're going to be moving into polygon modeling and polygon editing and subdividing and all that kind of stuff is going to become essential to everything we do. So now you understand where you get these little kind of subgroups of things, and then we'll get into the modeling toolkit and you know how to edit all these little like vertices and edge loops and things like that, which is kind of like a whole field to itself. Okay, all right, there we go. So that was that's that lesson. We'll move on to the next one. Okay.